Sir, Lance Corporal Johnson reporting for duty and responding to the appeal from General Sanders for a citizen army and encouraging young people across the country to think of the attractions, advantages of some kind of military training or service. Because at the moment they think it's either uncool or unethical, or perhaps they're not following General Sanders, they're following Colonel Sanders. To find out what we need to do about it, read my column in the Daily Mail.
This is my video update on this Saturday afternoon, January the 27th. Let's talk about some news. And how about that Boris Johnson trying to guilt trip the people of the UK into joining Sir Patrick Sanders' Citizen Army? That's what that video message was all about. Boris Johnson doing his little salute, saying, I'm here ready for duty. And then he tells the people of the UK to stop listening to Colonel Sanders and to start listening to Sir Patrick Sanders, who is the chief of the UK military general staff. The general staff of the army, actually, I think is his exact title. He's the one that came up with the idea of creating a citizen army to fight the Russians, to take on the Putin. And Johnson, he is ready for duty. He is ready to serve. And he is telling the people of the UK, stop eating the KFC and go fight the Russians. Take part in the citizen army. Now, I actually did a video on this a couple of days ago when I talked about Mr. Sanders' citizen army idea. And I actually brought up the myth, the legend that is KFC's Colonel Sanders, because Colonel Sanders and Patrick Sanders, Sir Patrick Sanders, actually confused him with Larry Sanders, who was a comedian, a U.S. comedian who actually had a semi-popular sitcom back in the day. So anyway, I got all the Sanders names confused and mixed up. But I mentioned Colonel Sanders in that video a couple of days ago. So Boris Johnson is copying me. He's copying me in my video, but he's using the name of the Colonel, the man who came up with the original KFC recipe. He's using Colonel Sanders' name for malicious intent. That's what I want to say. He's using Colonel Sanders' name for malicious intent in order to try and get the citizens of the UK to join the Citizens Army and to send them off to war to fight the Russians. Shame on you, Boris Johnson. You should lead by example. There is a conflict in Ukraine. The Russians are there. You've been to Kiev many times. It appears that you like Kiev. You like going there. So I suggest that Boris Johnson, reporting for duty, go to Kiev, join Zelensky's army. He's looking for 500,000 soldiers to mobilize. So Boris Johnson should go there. He should join the army, lead by example, and take on the Russians in Ukraine. That's what I think Boris Johnson should do. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on. And before I talk about Texas, let me just mention real quick about the ICJ ruling, and just mention that yesterday on the Duran, me and Alexander did a video right after the ruling was announced. We did a video, and Alexander went into a pretty good, detailed explanation on the ICJ ruling. So I will put a link for that in the description box down below. Definitely check out that video. And Alexander answers what I believe to be the most common, the most popular question that many people, including myself, had after the ruling was announced, which was why did the ICJ not call for an immediate ceasefire? And so Alexander answers that in the video that we published on the Duran. So definitely check that video out, and I think it will answer all your questions about the ICJ ruling, which was a big win for South Africa. And if Israel does not enforce and execute the rulings of the ICJ, the points that the ICJ came out with in this decision, if they're not enforced by Israel in a month's time, then things get very interesting. It puts Israel in a very, very difficult position. It puts the United States in a very difficult and isolated position, and it could potentially put the Netanyahu administration, as well as collective West leaders like Blinken, like Biden, like David Cameron and Schultz, collective West leaders that have given Israel a blank check to do whatever it wants, it could put them in a very difficult position, maybe even with the ICC, and maybe they may be put on trial for war crimes if in a month's time nothing changes or the ruling of the ICJ is ignored. So check out the Duran video. Let's see what happens now in this conflict, in this war in Israel and in Gaza. And in 1 month's time, if things have not changed, then things become very, very difficult for the collective West, for Israel, the United States, and Europe, especially Germany, because Germany, they decided to go to bat for Israel in this case. So that's what I have to say about the ICJ ruling. Let's now talk about Texas. Let's talk about what's going on in Texas. And Biden, he came out with some statements yesterday with regards to what is happening in Texas and the southern border, as well as the budget deal that is being negotiated in the Senate. And the budget deal is connected to the border, but it's also connected to Ukraine and funding for Project Ukraine. And Biden came out with a statement. And in his statement, Biden said that if the Senate, if Congress can agree on this budget deal, then Biden said he will close the border. He will solve the problem at the border right away. From the moment he signs the budget deal, he will fix the border. That was what Biden promised yesterday. Now, from what I understand, according to a report from the New York Times, what the Senate is working on is a budget deal, which basically says that that the border will be secured, or the president has the authority to secure the border right away if over 5,000 migrants are crossing through the legal entry points. I think I'm explaining this correctly. That is according to the New York Times. So what they're talking about in the Senate is, look, let's give the power to deal with the border to the executive if over a certain time period more than 5,000 migrants are crossing over legal entry points, and the president has the power and the authority to shut the border down. That's what they are working on, according to the New York Times. And I really hope I am explaining this correctly. If I'm not, then my apologies. But this isn't about the border. This is the main point about everything that's going on, including Biden's statement. This is not about the border. What this is about is unlocking the $61 billion for Project Ukraine. And even Politico when they were reporting on this story and Biden's statements on Friday, they even said as much. They hinted at what this is all about, which is money for Project Ukraine. Politico reported Biden's Friday evening statement comes after a week of hectic negotiations as negotiators try to salvage months-long talks to reach a border deal and unlock aid for Ukraine. The White House on Thursday continued to engage in talks and signal optimism for a deal, even as House Republicans say a deal could be dead on arrival. So, upon hearing the news that the budget deal that is being worked out in the Senate is about giving Biden the authority to close down the border if 5,001 migrants cross over, they said this thing's not going to work out. This is dead on arrival. That's what the Speaker Johnson said, and Trump, he also came out with a statement, and he's like, "Don't buy any of this. This is nonsense." Betting on Biden to actually enforce the border is crazy. We know that Biden doesn't want to enforce the border. If he wanted to enforce the border, he would have done so already. So Johnson, the House, Trump, they see right through the deal that's being negotiated in the Senate, and they see right through Biden's statements, which is just approve the budget, and I'll deal with the border right away. They see right through all of this stuff, and everyone understands that what this is all about is unlocking $61 billion to Project Ukraine. In a way, what the Biden White House is doing is they're using the tension in Texas as a way to try and push the Senate and the House to approve their $61 billion to Ukraine and the border linked to that. It's an interesting strategy that they've taken, but that's what they're trying to do. That is the strategy that Sullivan and his team have come up with. Let's actually use this crisis and this tension in Texas, and maybe this will push the GOP to get a budget deal negotiated, and then we can unlock the $61 billion. So that is what is happening in Texas, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There was a statement from the Biden White House saying that at the moment they're not going to take any action against Texas. They're not going to send any troops or anything like that to law enforcement to Texas at the moment. So that also leads me to believe that the Biden White House is taking a different approach to dealing with this. They're trying to use this crisis, never let a good crisis go to waste, and they're trying to use this crisis to force the Republicans to agree to the budget deal and to unlock money for Project Ukraine. The main point in all of this, which Trump saw through, and I believe Speaker Johnson sees through it, as I said, is that this is all about unlocking money to Ukraine and not about dealing with the border. Trying to think if there's anything else. 5,000, the number 5,000 crossing through legal entry points. If the number is more than 5,000, then the president can shut things down. That's right there. It sounds very suspicious. This whole plan sounds very suspicious right there. Anyway, the Biden White House announced yesterday that they are going to be pausing approvals of LNG terminals. This was an interesting story that kind of came out of nowhere, it seems. But the Biden White House, they announced yesterday that they will be putting a pause to the approval of LNG terminals. LNG terminals that have already been approved are not affected. LNG terminals that are currently up and running are not effective. are not affected. What this policy is stating is that any LNG terminals that are waiting for approval, they're going to be paused. And when this was first announced, there was a lot of analysis saying this is about punishing Texas. Pausing LNG terminals is about punishing Texas and everything that's going there, punishing the economy of Texas. A lot of people thought that this could be a way to somehow exert more control or influence or leverage over the European Union, because the European Union is now 100% dependent on the United States for energy, pretty much 100% dependent for the United States on energy. But it looks like what's going on with this story is actually a lot more simple than that. It's actually a lot more simple than that. It looks like there was a TikTok influencer who was calling on the Biden White House to do something about LNG terminals and climate change. And in order to appease the TikToker crowd, the TikToker voters, and the climate change voters, the Biden White House decided to come out with this policy and to put a pause in LNG terminals, in approvals of LNG terminals, a pause of approvals for LNG terminals. That's what this policy is about. And I was reading that we're talking about, in the United States, we're talking about 12 LNG terminals that are waiting approval. 2 of those, from what I read, are located in Texas. So this doesn't really, this won't really affect the economy of Texas too much. Well, what this is really all about is elections. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. It's elections and optics and pleasing the climate change crowd and pleasing the TikToker crowd and stuff like that. So that's my take on this story. And let's now talk about this Washington Post article, which is saying that the Biden White House believes there is no chance at a territory gain for Ukraine, at least not in 2024. The title of the Washington Post article is U.S. War Plans for Ukraine Don't Foresee Retaking Lost Territory. The Biden administration is working on a long-term strategy for supporting Kiev, despite the funding impasse in Congress, but those plans do not anticipate significant gains by Ukraine against Russia in 2024, officials say. So in this article from the Washington Post, it lays out the White House's strategy for Project Ukraine, or what the White House would like the strategy to be for the conflict in Ukraine. And the strategy is for the Ukraine military to build up its defenses, to dig in and build up the fortifications, and to go on active defense operations, which is pretty much copy paste the strategy of the Russian military over the last year. So basically, everything that Russia did in 2023 is copy paste what the Biden White House wants the strategy for the Ukraine military to be in 2024. And I actually talked about this in a video I made 3-4 days ago, when I was talking about some recent interviews from Ukraine officials, where they talked about how Ukraine is not really going on the offensive, and they're just going to build up fortifications, and they're going to go on active defense. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That's what Putin and Shoigu were saying like a month or 2 ago. And now Ukraine, you guys are lifting this active defense strategy, this terminology from Russia, and now you're you're incorporating it into your strategy. So 3-4 days ago, it looked like Ukraine, at least what they were going to be telling the collective West as far as their strategy for 2024 is concerned, was going to be one of building a Surovikin line and going on active defense. And now we have the Washington Post reporting as much. This is what the Biden White House plans for Project Ukraine in 2024. And the article actually says that the purpose of this strategy is to make Ukraine very, very strong in 2024, to build up Ukraine's strength in 2024, because you can't forget that in 2025, according to the New York Times and the Washington Post and the BBC, in 2025, we are going to have the spring, summer, counter to the counter offensive part 2 in the same exact direction as the one that was defeated this spring and summer. Tokmak, Melitopol to Crimea. 2025, the plan is for that entire thing to rerun again in 2025. Rerun 2023's counteroffensive defeat in 2025. So 2024, according to the Washington Post, is going to be a rebuilding, strengthening year for Project Ukraine. And, this is all, once again, this is all Sullivan, in my opinion. This is all Sullivan telling Ukraine and telling the Zelensky regime, just don't collapse during this election cycle. Don't collapse in 2024. We'll try to give you whatever we can, 61 billion. If we can, great. If we can't make it 61 billion, we'll get you something else, but don't collapse in 2024 as we are going through an election in the United States. This is Sullivan. This is Sullivan's strategy and plan for Project Ukraine. And we've been saying on the Duran for a while now, almost a year now, that we have been saying, when all is said and done, you watch. Sullivan, being a campaign guy, that's what he does. He's a campaign guy. He is going to do everything he can to make sure that there's no Afghanistan-like collapse in Ukraine during the election in 2024. And that's what this strategy really is. So that's the report from the Washington Post. And the Kiev Independent actually came out with an interesting report saying that most of the businesses in the east of Ukraine, the eastern part that's controlled by Ukraine and much of the center of Ukraine, a lot of the businesses are now moving west. And the Kiev Independent, they were reporting that a lot of the analysts believe that in the West is where all the investment is going to be going forward. So all the businesses, they're moving their factories, their operations, everything is moving west. And that's where the focus of business activity and investment is going to take place. And I was just thinking, looking at what the Washington Post is saying with their defensive, active defense strategy that they now want the Ukraine military to undertake in 2024, the investment moving from east center to west, all the talk about a second capital in Lviv and all of this stuff. And I was just thinking, this is moving towards this insurgency model that we've been hearing about, the war shifting from conventional to insurgency, understanding that in the east the war is lost, possibly even all the way up to Kiev in the center of Ukraine. The war may be lost, and it's time to create this new capital, this new government, this new Ukraine in the West, possibly with Budanov in charge. That's what I was thinking when I was reading this article from the Kiev Independent, talking about all of the businesses and the investments going to the West. So let's do a couple more stories and we can wrap this video up. And how about the Telegraph, the UK's Telegraph, saying that the US is going to redeploy nuclear weapons to eastern England? The Pentagon is reportedly looking to bring B-16-12 bombs to eastern England. Interesting story. This is going to be the first time US nuclear weapons, are deployed in the UK in 15 years. The Telegraph reported Friday, citing Pentagon officials. Got to get that citizen army ready, and you got to get those US nukes in place so that Britain can take on the Russians, take on the Putin. And we have news that the F-16s have been approved to be given to Turkey. That is being reported by the BBC. The U.S. government has approved the $23 billion sale of 40 new F-16 fighter jets to Turkey, a move that had been long delayed after Ankara ratified Sweden's accession to NATO. The deal includes modernization kits for 79 existing Turkish F-16s. The U.S. State Department told Congress it had also approved the sale of 40 F-35 fighters to Greece, costing $8.6 billion. The BBC is reporting that Turkey ratified Sweden's NATO accession after more than a year of delay that caused tension in the alliance. And so there you have it. Turkey ratifies Sweden's entry into NATO, and the F-16 deal is stamped, signed, approved. And in order to appease Greece, you get F-35s going to Greece as well. So there it is. There it is. And the Wall Street Journal, they had an interesting article where they talked about Ukrainian icons and a secret mission. Putin, Ukrainian icons, and a secret mission. 6th century works on view at the Louvre were spirited out of Kiev amid the war. According to the Wall Street Journal, on view at the Louvre Museum until January 29th are 5 of the world's rarest Orthodox Christian icons. 11 more are cocooned at a warehouse about an hour's train ride from the city. The objects were exfiltrated from the Kakhnenko National Museum of Arts in Kiev, Ukraine, to safeguard them from Russian bombardment. Exfiltrated by France and taken to Paris. Stolen by France. 6th century Orthodox icons stolen by France using the excuse of Russian bombardment. That's what this story should say. And let's do a clown world. Let's see here. This is a clown world. This is a clown world, and I'm not going to get into too much detail about this story because I think other analysts could talk about this much better than I can. But the judgment against Trump, 70 or 80 million against Trump, and the sexual assault of what was her name? E.G. Carroll or E.H. Carroll or Christmas Carol or whatever her name is. I don't even know her name, but this is the case that happened. Allegedly, this went down in a clothing store or something like that in 1996, and at New York, the New York court ruled in her favor, and she is supposed to get $80 million. So what's going on here is real simple. This is really easy to analyze. In my opinion, is they're building the case against Trump. With each court case, with each lawsuit, with each indictment, with each state trying to remove Trump from the ballot, all of these things are designed to build the ultimate boogeyman, the ultimate monster, right? So that whoever's running against Trump, whether it's Biden or Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever they decide to go with. It's going to be Biden, but just in case, I'm throwing out some other names. All of this is designed to give them their talking points, their narrative. They're building the ultimate boogeyman, the ultimate evil orange man, so that Biden can give speeches and go on the debate stage if he's capable of doing a debate. If they pump him up with enough stuff so that he can do a debate, so that he can get on the debate stage and say, you were found guilty, 80 million in the E.G. I think it's E.G. Carroll case. You know, your tax records, you've been removed from the ballot of Colorado. You have 600 indictments, and blah blah blah. That's what this is all about. And the interesting part about all of this is that the globalist deep state elite, they're building this monster narrative of Trump, who's going to be their opponent. And what it really is just a projection of everything they are, right? That's all it is. Every single indictment and every single judgment against Trump and all of the scandals and controversies that they throw at Trump, they're just projecting everything that they are or they have done onto Trump. I mean, this monster that they're building is the mirror, is them looking in the mirror. Hey, that's how I see it. Nikki Haley, she came out with a post and she said Donald Trump wants to be the presumptive Republican nominee, and we're talking about 83 million in damages. We're not talking about fixing the border. We're not talking about tackling inflation. America can do better than Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And the person, from what I understand, the person that funded this court case was I think it was Reid Hoffman, wasn't it? Is that right? I think Reid Hoffman was funding this case, and Reid Hoffman is the guy that was funding Nikki Haley. The reports are that he's pulling out of funding Nikki Haley, the founder of LinkedIn. I think I'm right. If I'm not right about that, then scrap everything I said. But I believe he was the one that has been funding this litigation against Trump in this recent case. Anyway, there's this fake news, I'm going to say. It's still an interesting story, but I think this is, without a doubt, a fake story. But it is saying that Zelensky, upon hearing everything that's going down in Texas, he said that Ukraine is ready to join the United States instead of Texas. And there you can see the screen grab from some Ukrainian publication running this article about what Zelensky allegedly said, which is obviously is not true. Even for Zelensky, I don't think he's that dumb to say something like that. But who knows? maybe he said something like that. I don't know. Anyway, that is the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. 15% off all t-shirts. Take care.